The rain in San Francisco wasn't just falling. It was attacking, a relentless, horizontal assault that turned streets into rivers and sidewalks into shallow lakes. Dr. Marcus Thorne stood under the fragile awning of a downtown high-rise, his tailored suit jacket offering little protection from the spray. On his phone, the Uber app displayed a triumphant message. Asterisk, your driver, Amir, is 2 minutes away in a gray Toyota Camry. Asterisk, relief washed over him. This meeting was everything. After a decade of building his tech startup, Ether, from a college dorm room into a billion-dollar AI powerhouse, tonight was a final pitch to the venture capital firm that could take it global. He'd spent weeks perfecting his presentation. Being late wasn't an option. He watched the little car icon on the map approach, its progress a slow but steady beacon of hope. It turned onto a street. 1 minute away. He tightened his grip on his leather briefcase, ready to step into the downpour. And then it happened. The car icon stopped. For a solid 30 seconds, it didn't move. Then it made a clumsy digital U-turn on the map and began moving away, picking up speed. A notification banner slid across the top of his screen. Asterisk, your driver has canceled this trip. Asterisk, Marcus stared, disbelief momentarily holding the cold at bay. He was stranded. He frantically requested another ride. The app searched, the animation spinning, and then delivered its verdict. Asterisk 15-minute wait due to high demand in your area. Asterisk, he'd be late. The VCs, men for whom time was a more valuable currency than money, would not look kindly on it. A wave of frustrated fury crested within him. Why? He clicked on the help section, his fingers cold and stiff. There was an option to report a problem with cancellation. He navigated to it and selected Other. In the text box, he typed, his thumb strokes sharp and angry. Asterisk driver Amir, license plate 8LXB289, was 2 minutes away, saw my location and canceled. Now I will miss a critical business meeting. This is unacceptable. Asterisk, he hit submit, the digital complaint feeling woefully inadequate against a very real consequence of a missed opportunity. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, took a deep breath, and prepared to make a desperate, soggy sprint for a bus stop he knew was 6 blocks away. But as he did, his tech CEO mind, trained to see patterns and analyze data, kicked in. This wasn't the first time. It was the third time this month a driver had canceled after being moments away. The other 2 times, he'd also been standing in predominantly black neighborhoods. A cold, sickening suspicion began to crystallize, cutting deeper than the rain ever could. Meanwhile, 3 miles away, Amir sat in his idling Camry. Feeling a pang of guilt, he quickly rationalized away. The profile picture had been small, but the man under the awning had looked sharp, professional. But Amir had been burned before. Last month, a young guy in a hoodie had puked his back seat, costing him a $150 cleaning fee and a full day's wages. The month before that, a group of loud teenagers had given him a 1-star rating for bad music. He looked at the pickup location, a high-end financial district. He looked at the name, Marcus. He'd made a split-second calculation based on a twisted algorithm of fear and prejudice. Asterisk, this guy looks like he could be trouble. He'll probably complain about my driving. It's not worth the risk. Asterisk better take the small cancellation penalty than a potential 1-star review or worse. He dismissed the guilt. It was just business. Survival. Marcus, drenched and fuming, finally made it to his meeting 15 minutes late. The partners, 3 older white men in a pristine, silent conference room, were polite but cold. The energy was gone. His pitch, once a well-oiled machine, felt clunky and disjointed. He could see their attention waning. A fascinating concept, Marcus, the lead partner said, not making eye contact as he closed his portfolio. We'll be in touch. It was a rejection. He knew it. They wouldn't be in touch. That night, sitting in his sleek, modern apartment overlooking the city, the anger hadn't subsided. It had hardened into something else, a resolve. He opened his laptop, not to the Ether interface, but to a command prompt. He had an idea, a side project. Using his formidable coding skills, he created a simple script. He plugged in Amir's license plate and name. The script would act as a digital canary, a silent watchdog. If Amir's driver account was ever linked to another formal complaint of discriminatory cancellation, Marcus would be the first to know. It was a small, almost petty act of digital vigilance. He closed a laptop, thinking that was the end of it. It was not the end. It was the beginning. A week later, at 2 a.m., his phone buzzed on his nightstand. A notification from his script. Asterisk alert. Driver Amir, 8LXB289. Linked to new complaint. Category, discriminatory cancellation. Asterisk. He sat up, fully awake. He opened the attached data. The complainant was a young black woman named Keisha. Her report was almost identical to his. Asterisk. Driver was 1 minute away. Saw me waiting outside my building in Oakland and drove off. Asterisk. The pattern was real. It wasn't just him. It was a system, a bias, playing out in real time on the streets of the city. The next morning, he did more than write a script. He made a call to his chief financial officer. Jen, he said, his voice calm but absolute. Liquidate $50 million from my personal holdings. I have a new acquisition target. Marcus, that's a huge chunk of your liquidity. What are we buying? He looked out at the city, at the thousands of tiny cars moving like blood cells through its veins. Mobility, he said. We're buying Uber. The corporate headquarters of Uber was a monument to its own disruption. Glass, steel, and the frenetic energy of a company that had conquered the world, but was still figuring out what to do with it. The emergency board meeting had been called with no agenda, sending a ripple of anxiety through the C-suite. Marcus Thorne walked into the boardroom, not as a supplicant, but as a conqueror. He was accompanied by Jen, his razor-sharp CFO, and a phalanx of lawyers. He didn't take a seat. He stood at the head of the table, placing his briefcase down with a quiet, definitive thud. "Good morning," he began, his voice filling the room, without needing to be raised. "My name is Dr. Marcus Thorne. As of 8:02 a.m. this morning, the Thorne Trust has acquired a controlling 34% stake in this company. Effective immediately, I am installing myself as interim CEO and chairman of the board." The silence was deafening, broken only by the choked sputter of the outgoing COO. A man named Brad Thompson. This is a hostile takeover. Brad managed to say, his face flushing. "It's a rescue mission," Marcus corrected, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces. "This company has a sickness, a cancer, and it's not in your balance sheets. It's in your algorithm, and it's in the hearts of some of your drivers. It's called racial bias." He opened his briefcase and took out 2 sheets of paper. He slid the first one toward Brad. "This is an internal data analysis I commissioned last night. It shows that ride requests from accounts with traditionally black-sounding names in predominantly black neighborhoods are 35% more likely to be canceled by drivers after acceptance than those from other accounts. 35%. A nervous murmur went around the table. He slid the second sheet. "This is the personal account of one of those canceled riders. Me, last week, your driver, Amir, left me standing in the rain and made me miss a meeting that cost my company 9 figures in potential funding. He let that hang in the air. The billionaire they had just let in the door was a victim of their own platform's failure. The irony was crippling. My first executive order," Marcus announced, "is Project Fair Ride. We are overhauling the entire driver-rider matching and accountability system. We're developing a new bias-detecting algorithm, and we are creating a dedicated, empowered task force to investigate and adjudicate claims of discriminatory cancellations." The old guard was horrified. "You can't punish drivers for exercising discretion," one board member argued. "They're independent contractors. This will cause a revolt." "Discretion is one thing," Marcus fired back. "Bigotry is another, and when that bigotry is enabled by your technology, it becomes your problem. And now it's my problem to fix." He didn't wait for a vote. He didn't ask for permission. He was a majority shareholder. The decision was made. The announcement, when it went public, was explosive. Hashtag Uber under new management trended globally. The response was split. Many celebrated it as a long overdue reckoning for the gig economy. Others, including a vocal segment of drivers, saw it as an overreach an attack on their freedom to choose their passengers. Amir heard the news on the car radio. The new CEO's name, Dr. Marcus Thorne, meant nothing to him at first. It was just another suit. But when the details of Project Fair Ride were outlined, specifically the crackdown on post-acceptance cancellations, a cold knot tightened in his stomach. He thought of the man in the rain. The name Marcus. He pulled over, Googling the new Uber CEO. A professional headshot filled his screen. It was him, the man from the rain. Amir's blood ran cold. The man he dismissed, the man he judged as a potential problem, owned the company. He felt a terror that was both personal and professional. He was finished. But Marcus's focus wasn't on Amir. Not yet. He was in the war room, looking at a massive screen displaying a U.S. map, lit up with thousands of dots representing real-time Fair Ride complaints. The sheer volume was staggering. It's not just one driver, Jen, Marcus said, his voice grim. It's a pandemic. We knew it was bad, Jen replied. We didn't know it was this bad. Just then, the head of the new task force, a formidable woman named Isabel, rushed in. Marcus, we have a problem. A big one. What is it? We've been hit with a class action lawsuit. It's not from riders. It's from a group of drivers. On what grounds? Marcus asked, though he already knew. They're claiming the new algorithm is discriminatory against them, Isabel said, handing him a tablet with the legal filing. They say the bias detection flags drivers who avoid high-crime areas, which disproportionately happen to be minority neighborhoods. They're calling it reverse racism and demanding we scrap Project Fair Ride. Marcus scanned the document. The lead plaintiff was a driver's union, and their lawyer was a notorious, firebrand conservative attorney named Rex McCoy, who was already on Fox News, decrying the woke mob's takeover of the gig economy. They had organized faster than he could have imagined. They weren't just fighting the policy. They were fighting the very idea that bias existed. They were weaponizing the law to protect their prejudice. And they had just fired the first shot. The new studio lights were blindingly hot. Marcus sat across from Rex McCoy, the pugnacious lawyer for the United Drivers Association. The host, a woman with a surgically sharp smile, sat between them, ready to unleash the fireworks. So, Mr. McCoy, the host began, you're suing Uber, claiming their new anti-bias measures are in fact discriminatory. Explain. Rex leaned into the microphone, his voice a well-practiced blend of outrage and reason. It's simple, Laura. Dr. Thorne here is punishing hard-working Americans for using their God-given right to safety. My clients are not racist. They are fathers, mothers, and grandparents. They avoid areas with high crime statistics. It's not about race. It's about survival. And now, if they cancel a ride in a statistically dangerous neighborhood, they're penalized, their ratings plummet, and they can be deactivated. This is social engineering at its most dangerous. He turned his glare to Marcus. Dr. Thorne is using a sledgehammer to swat a fly that may not even exist. The host turned to Marcus. Dr. Thorne, your response? Is Uber now forcing drivers into unsafe situations? Marcus kept his composure, though every instinct wanted him to dismantle the man's flawed logic. Laura, this isn't about forcing anyone into danger. This is about preventing discrimination based on a passenger's name or neighborhood. Our data is unequivocal. The cancellation disparity is not explained by crime statistics. It's explained by bias. We are not penalizing drivers for canceling in demonstrably dangerous situations. We are penalizing them for accepting a ride, seeing a passenger's profile, and then driving away based on prejudice. Prejudice. Rex boomed, playing to camera. He has no proof. It's all in his algorithm, which he won't fully disclose. He's playing God with people's livelihoods based on a personal vendetta. The segment devolved into a shouting match, with Rex successfully framing Marcus as an out-of-touch elitist punishing the little guy. The hashtag Drivers Lives Matter began trending, co-opting the language of social justice to fight against it. The legal battle was even more brutal. Rex's legal team filed motion after motion, dragging the process out, demanding every line of proprietary algorithms code, claiming it was the only way to prove their clients were being unfairly targeted. It was a brilliant, cynical strategy. Bury Uber in legal costs and bad PR until Marcus was forced to capitulate. Back at Uber headquarters, the pressure was taking its toll. Driver satisfaction scores were plummeting. A small but vocal group of drivers began staging protests outside the offices. The stock price, after an initial surge, began to wobble. "They're winning the narrative, Marcus," Jen said, her face etched with worry. "We have the data, but they have the sound bites." Marcus felt the walls closing in. He had the truth, but the truth was losing. He needed a new strategy. He needed to put a human face on the data. He called Isabel into his office. "I want to meet them," he said. "Meet who?" "The lawyers." "No, the drivers who are suing us, and the riders who have been wronged. Set up a meeting. No lawyers, no cameras, just people." Isabel looked skeptical, but agreed. A week later, in a neutral conference room, Marcus sat across from a dozen people. On one side were the plaintiff drivers, led by a stern, middle-aged man named Frank. On the other side were riders like Keisha, the young woman from Oakland, and an older black man named Mr. Evans, who'd been passed over 3 times on his way to a doctor's appointment. The atmosphere was thick with hostility. Frank spoke first. "You're trying to destroy us. I've been driving for 6 years. 5-star rating. I've never been racist a day in my life, but I have a right to protect myself." Keisha didn't let him finish. "Protect yourself from what? From me? I was standing outside my own apartment building. Frank, where I live. You think my home is a dangerous area? You canceled on me because I'm black. Admit it. It's not that simple." Frank argued, his face red. "You don't know what it's like out there. And you don't know what it's like to be treated like a criminal for just existing." Keisha shot back, her voice trembling with emotion. Marcus watched, saying very little. He saw the fear on both sides. The driver's fear of physical harm, the rider's fear of social and economic exclusion. They were trapped in a system that pitted them against each other. It was Mr. Evans, the older man, who finally broke through. He spoke softly, but everyone listened. "Son," he said to Frank, "in 1963, I couldn't get a cab in this city to save my life. They'd see my skin and drive right on by. I thought those days were over. But now, I get on this fancy app on my phone, and it's the same thing. The technology changed, but the hurt is the exact same." The room went quiet. Frank looked down at his hands, unable to meet Mr. Evans's gaze. The meeting didn't solve everything, but it created a crack. Frank and a few other drivers agreed to look at the anonymized data, to see the patterns for themselves. But as Marcus left the meeting, feeling a flicker of hope, his phone rang. It was Isabel, her voice tight with panic. "Marcus, you need to get back to the office. Now." "What's happened?" "There's been an incident." One of the drivers who was at the protest today, he followed one of our riders home, a black college student. He screamed at him, called him a social justice warrior, and threatened him. He said, "Tell your CEO this is what happens when he messes with our jobs." Marcus's blood ran cold. The abstract legal battle had just gotten terrifyingly real. The security footage was grainy but chilling. A young man, Jamal, got out of his own car in his apartment complex's parking lot. A sedan pulled in behind him, blocking him in. A man Marcus recognized from the protest. A driver named Vince got out, pointing a finger and screaming into Jamal's face. The audio was muffled, but the words "CEO" and "our jobs" were clear. Jamal stood frozen, his hands raised in a placating gesture, before finally managing to sidestep the man and rush into his building. Marcus watched the video in his office, a cold fury building inside him. This was no longer about data or algorithms. This was about the safety of the people he was sworn to protect. "Is Jamal okay?" he asked Isabel, his voice dangerously quiet. "Shaken up, but physically fine. He's terrified. He doesn't want to press charges. He's afraid of making it worse." "Where's Vince now?" Marcus asked. "We've deactivated his account permanently. The police have been notified, but without a formal complaint. This ends now," Marcus said. He stood up, "Call an all-hands meeting, and I want every media outlet in this city there." An hour later, The entire Uber staff, plus a throng of journalists, was crammed into the company's largest atrium. The mood was tense, electric. Marcus walked onto the stage, the giant screen behind him displaying the security still of Vince's face. "This man," Marcus began, his voice echoing through the silent room, "is a driver we have now banned for life. Last night, he followed one of our riders, a young man named Jamal, to his home and threatened him. He did this because he disagrees with our company's mission to provide equitable service for everyone." He paused, letting the gravity of the act sink in. "Let me be perfectly clear. We will pursue every legal avenue against this individual, but he is not the root of the problem. He is a symptom. He is a result of a culture of entitlement and prejudice that has been allowed to fester, a culture that says it is acceptable to deny service based on skin color and then cry victim when you are held accountable." He turned to the screen, which now showed the map of fair ride complaints. "To those drivers who are genuinely afraid, I hear you. Your safety matters. And we are rolling out new safety features next week. Panic buttons, real-time location sharing with law enforcement, enhanced insurance. But using safety as a shield for bigotry is over." His tone shifted, becoming more personal, more powerful. "I did not buy this company to win a lawsuit. I bought it to fix a wrong I experienced myself. I am not an out-of-touch elitist. I am a black man who has been left standing in the rain. I am Keisha. I am Mr. Evans. I am Jamal. We are your customers. We are your neighbors. And we will not be made to feel like second-class citizens in our own city, on our own platform any longer." The speech was a watershed moment. Clips of it went massively viral. But this time, the narrative was different. Hashtag I am Marcus Thorne and hashtag We Are Jamal started trending alongside hashtag Uber Reform. The silent majority of riders and decent drivers found their voice, pushing back against the angry fringe. In the wake of the speech, Frank, the driver who had led the plaintiffs, requested another meeting with Marcus. This time, he came alone. "I saw the video," Frank said, his voice heavy. "What that guy did, that's not us. That's not what we want." He hesitated. "Some of the other drivers and we've been looking at the data you gave us. It's hard to ignore." "It is," Marcus agreed. "We want to drop the lawsuit," Frank said. "We'll issue a statement. We don't condone what Vince did. We got played by that lawyer, McCoy. He used our fear to fight his political war." It was the victory Marcus needed. With the lead plaintiffs withdrawing, the class action suit collapsed. Rex McCoy, denied his platform, faded from the headlines. Marcus announced a new driver-rider advisory council, co-chaired by Frank and Keisha, to help design the new safety and fairness policies together. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. It was dialogue. Watching the first meeting of the council from his office, Marcus felt a sense of hard-won peace. The system was beginning to heal. His phone buzzed. It was Jen. "You need to see this," she said, her voice strange. "An external audit of our old financials just found something. A series of payments. From the previous CEO, Brad Thompson." "What kind of payments?" Marcus asked. "Consulting fees. Millions of dollars. To a shell corporation." "So?" "He was probably siphoning money." "That's what we thought," Jen said. "But we traced the shell corp Marcus. It's owned by Rex McCoy." Marcus froze. The pieces clicked together with terrifying speed. The backlash, the lawsuit, the organized protest wasn't just a grassroots driver rebellion. It was a meticulously planned, well-funded sabotage operation orchestrated by the ousted old guard. Brad Thompson hadn't just been embezzling. He had been paying his lawyer to destroy Marcus's reputation and derail Project Fair Ride, hoping to create enough chaos to stage a boardroom coup and take his company back. And as Marcus stared out the window, he realized one terrifying thing. He had fired Brad, but he was still out there, and a man who had already paid to have him intimidated and sued had just lost everything. He was more dangerous than ever. The revelation was a gut punch. The war he thought he was fighting against prejudice was, in part, a proxy war orchestrated by a vengeful, ousted billionaire. Brad Thompson wasn't just bitter. He was desperate and dangerous, his fortune and legacy tied to seeing Marcus fail. Marcus's security team went on high alert. Jen and his lawyers began building a RICO case, connecting the financial dots between Brad, the Shell Corporation, and Rex McCoy's orchestrated chaos. But Brad was a step ahead. He knew the financial trail would eventually lead back to him. His goal was no longer to win back his company. It was to burn to the ground and salt the earth. 2 days after the discovery, Marcus's personal phone rang. A blocked number. He answered. Thorne. Enjoying your victory, Tor Marcus? Brad's voice was smooth, laced with venomous amusement. Or should I call you Doctor? It's so impressive. A boy from the projects coming all this way. Marcus's blood ran cold. Brad had done his research, digging into his past to find the most personal vulnerabilities. This ends now, Brad. The SEC and the FBI have the records. Oh, I'm sure they do, Brad chuckled. But by the time they untangle it all, you'll be finished. You see, I'm not trying to beat you in court. I'm going to show the world who you really are. What are you talking about? Your precious ether eye, the crown jewel of your empire, the source of all your wealth and power. What would your investors say if they knew its core predictive algorithm was based on borrowed intellectual property? It was a lie. A monstrous, devastating lie. Ether was his life's work, built from the ground up. That's absurd, Marcus said, his voice tight. Is it? I have a sworn affidavit from a former colleague of yours at Stanford, ready to go to the Wall Street Journal, claiming you stole the foundational code from a shared project. It's his word against yours, of course. But the cloud of suspicion, it'll tank Ether's valuation. Your shares will be worthless. You'll lose your controlling stake in Uber. You'll lose everything. It was a classic, ruthless corporate takedown. Truth was irrelevant. Perception was everything. You're bluffing, Marcus said, but a sliver of doubt crept in. Who had he paid off? Who had he threatened? Am I? Check your inbox. A second later, Marcus's laptop chimed. He opened the email. It was a draft of the journal article, complete with quotes from a former academic associate, detailing the fictional theft. It was horrifyingly credible. Brad had him cornered. He could fight the lie, but the damage would be done. Ether would be mortally wounded, and without its value, his control over Uber would vanish. He looked out at the city, at the millions of people whose daily lives were touched by his companies. He thought of Jamal, of Keisha, of Mr. Evans. He had promised them change. He had promised them fairness. And then he saw it, the flaw in Brad's plan. Brad, in his entitled rage, had underestimated him. He saw Marcus as a tech geek who got lucky, not as a strategist. Marcus made a decision. He would not play defense. You've made one mistake, Brad, Marcus said, his voice calm again. And what's that? You used a digital trail to attack me, and I am a digital native. While Brad had been talking, Marcus had been typing, pulling up the watchdog script he'd written the night Amir had canceled on him. The script that had started it all. He modified it, inputting the phone number Brad was calling from. It was a long shot, but Brad was arrogant. He might be using a personal cell. The script cross-referenced the number with a database of known corporate logins, and there it was. A hit. Brad had been foolish enough to use a phone linked to his old, never-revoked Uber executive admin account. You're still using your old Uber credentials, Brad, Marcus said. You've been accessing our internal systems. That's a federal crime. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And I have the log right here, showing you've been in our driver database, our financial records, and our internal communications about Project Fair Ride. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. The smugness was gone. You can't prove that. I just did, Marcus said. I'm sending this log, along with the recording of this call, which you consented to by continuing this conversation in a two-party consent state to the FBI right now. Your sabotage isn't just a corporate dispute anymore, Brad. It's espionage. You're not going to lose your company. You're going to prison. He could hear Brad's ragged breathing on the other end. The hunter had become the hunted. You're finished, Brad. Marcus didn't wait for a reply. He hung up. He made the calls. To the FBI. To the SEC. To his lawyers. The evidence was delivered. The fallout was swift and brutal. Brad Thompson was arrested at his home in Atherton the next morning. The Wall Street Journal story never ran. Instead, the headlines were about the fall of a tech titan brought down by his own corruption, with the architect of the chaos in custody. The last remnants of the opposition crumbled. Project Fair Ride was implemented fully, becoming a model for the entire tech industry. Weeks later, Marcus was back in the Uber headquarters, but this time, he wasn't in the boardroom. He was in the driver's green room, sitting across from a nervous Amir who had been summoned for a meeting. Amir couldn't look him in the eye. "Mr. Thorne, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry." Marcus looked at him, not with anger, but with a sense of closure. "You were a symptom, Amir, but you're also part of the solution. You've taken the new bias training. You've joined the advisory council. You're trying." Amir nodded, tears in his eyes. "I am. I promise." "Then that's all that matters," Marcus said. "This company, it's not just about moving people from point A to point B anymore. It's about moving us all forward. Together." He stood up and offered his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Amir took it. As Marcus walked out of the building and into the sunlight, his phone buzzed. It was a ride request. He smiled, opened the app, and accepted. It was time to go home. If you have stayed with us to this point, then subscribe and share to join our fight for a just world. Stay tuned for what's next. The end.